Plans changed. You and the boys are not coming. Your sister wants only real family on the cruise. My stepmother sent that text at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning while I was pouring cereal for my two sons. I read it once, then again. The boys were at the table in their pajamas, asking if they could bring their little blue backpacks on the luxury ship, and I set the phone face down before they could see my hands shaking. Thank you for watching the video. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. My name is Delphine. I am 35 years old, and for my entire life, I was the guest who paid the bills in my own family. I work as a forensic accountant, a job that requires me to look at numbers and find the hidden lies beneath them. But for decades, I was completely blind to the lies in my own home. 10 minutes after that text message arrived, my phone rang. It was Rowena, my stepmother. Her voice was incredibly sweet, dripping with that fake, sugary warmth she always used when she was about to twist the knife. "Let us not make a scene, Delphine," she said lightly, as if we were discussing the weather. "You always understand. Oh, and do not forget the roofer needs his $4,500 by Friday." I stood in my kitchen, staring at the wall. The sheer audacity of it washed over me. I took a slow, deep breath, letting the icy reality of my situation freeze the tears right out of my eyes. "I understand perfectly," I told her. "Enjoy the cruise." Then I hung up the phone. To understand how I could walk away from my entire family without a single backward glance, you have to understand the empire of lies they built on my back. My father Silas passed away when I was young, leaving me with Rowena and her daughter, my half-sister Sloane. Sloane was the absolute golden child, the royalty of our household. We lived in a massive, sprawling estate in Belmont Ridge, a town where old money dictated your worth. Every autumn, our family had a tradition under the giant oak tree in the front yard. We were given silver acorn lockets to symbolize our place in the family lineage. When I was 7, Rowena gathered everyone around. She handed Sloane a brilliant, shining gold locket. Then, she reached into her pocket and handed me a dark, tarnished, incredibly ugly piece of metal. "This one suits you better, Delphine," she said in front of all the aunts and uncles. Blood is blood, after all. I carried that tarnished locket in my pocket for 28 years, constantly feeling like a second-class citizen. I was entirely convinced I was the outsider. Because of that profound insecurity, I spent my entire adult life trying to buy their love. I paid the annual property taxes on the Belmont Ridge estate. I paid for the luxury car leases. I secretly paid off Sloane's staggering credit card debts when she maxed them out on designer clothes. I was the silent, invisible machinery that kept their wealthy facade standing, always hoping that one day they would pull out a chair for me at the head of the table. Instead, they placed me in a folding chair in the corner, draining my bank accounts while treating my two innocent boys like inconvenient pests. But 6 months before that fateful Tuesday morning, the ground beneath their empire had already started to crack. I received an unexpected phone call from Merrick, the old family attorney who managed my late grandmother's estate. Merrick was 68 years old, a man of absolute discretion and ironclad loyalty. He asked me to come to his office alone. When I arrived, he slid a heavy cedar box across his mahogany desk. Inside was a letter from my grandmother, smelling faintly of lavender and old paper, alongside a stack of legal documents. Merrick looked at me with immense sorrow. "They are living there by your grace, Delphine," he said softly. "You are the owner. You have been paying the bills for a house that is already yours." I sat there, completely frozen. He explained that my grandmother had secretly transferred the deed of the Belmont Ridge estate into my name 2 years ago. Rowena and Sloane were legally nothing more than temporary tenants, permitted to stay only until the estate fully settled. Furthermore, the massive family trust fund, the real wealth of our bloodline, was scheduled for final distribution this coming June. But my grandmother had installed a highly specific clause. To inherit the trust, the beneficiaries had to submit to a mandatory DNA verification. No exceptions. With trembling hands, I opened my grandmother's letter. It was written in her elegant, sweeping handwriting. She told me she had always known that Sloane was not my father's child. She had watched Rowena parade her golden child around, stealing my birthright, but without solid proof, an old woman's accusations would have only torn the family apart prematurely. So, she built a legal snare. She set the trap for June. And the ugly, tarnished locket Rowena had shamed me with in front of the whole family? It was not tarnished. It was simply ancient. It was the original family heirloom, the one from which all the shiny copies were cast. I had been carrying the crown jewels in my pocket my entire life, apologizing for the dirt on them. I had spent my life trying to earn a seat at a table that I actually owned. Armed with my skills as a forensic accountant, I quietly went to work. I did not confront them. Instead, I dug into the past. I pulled decades-old country club rosters, hospital admission logs, and financial records. I cross-referenced my father's business travel dates with the month of Sloane's conception. The math was completely impossible. Then I found him. A man named Vance, a former golf pro at the Belmont Ridge Club, who vanished exactly 1 month before Sloane was born. In a faded photograph from a summer gala, Vance stood next to Rowena, and he had the exact same narrow jawline and eye shape as the golden child. But suspicions are not proof. I needed absolute certainty. 2 months ago, during a miserable Sunday dinner at the estate, I slipped into Sloane's pristine bathroom and took a few strands of hair from her expensive brush. I sent them off for a private, highly expedited genetic screening, comparing her markers to mine. When the envelope arrived, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the staggering result. We shared 0% family DNA. She was a complete stranger. Rowena had built an entire kingdom on a colossal, unforgivable lie. Which brings me back to that Tuesday morning, staring at the text message that banned my children from the family cruise. Suddenly, Rowena's behavior over the past few weeks made absolute, terrifying sense. She had been unusually nice, constantly dropping by, offering me tea, and casually trying to get me to sign a stack of estate waiver documents, claiming it was just routine paperwork before June. She knew the DNA test was coming. She knew the trust was about to demand the truth. She was desperately trying to get me to legally forfeit my rights before the trap snapped shut. And when I refused to sign without reading, she panicked. Banning me from the cruise was not just an insult. It was a calculated, psychological blow meant to completely crush my spirit, hoping I would be too depressed and obedient to fight her when she returned. She thought she was locking me out of a vacation. She had no idea I was about to lock her out of her entire life. Inside my chest, a profound, icy calm took over. I did not cry. I did not rage. I walked over to my laptop and opened the banking portal. I navigated to the joint accounts I had funded for years. Click. I canceled the property insurance. Click. I terminated the automatic payments for the roofer, the landscaper, and the country club dues. Click. I permanently deactivated the platinum credit cards resting in Sloane's designer purse. Every confirmation sound from my computer was like a heavy iron gate slamming shut. Then, I picked up the phone and called a private real estate investor I had vetted weeks ago, a man known for buying luxury properties for cash, completely under the radar. I am ready, I told him. I accepted his offer, which was slightly below market value, but guaranteed an immediate, ruthless closing. Within 3 hours, the electronic wire transfer cleared into my personal account. The deed was legally transferred. The Belmont Ridge estate, the castle they thought they ruled, was entirely gone. I requested that the buyer place his largest, most visible real estate sign on the front lawn by 3 o'clock that afternoon. I packed my boys into the car. I placed the original, tarnished silver acorn carefully into my purse alongside the photograph of my late father. We left town for a quiet resort 3 states away, leaving no forwarding address. While my children swam in a beautiful, sunlit pool, Rowena and Sloane were walking into a nightmare over the Atlantic Ocean. On the 3rd day of their luxury cruise, they walked into a high-end boutique on the ship. Sloane tried to buy a $3,000 handbag. Declined. Rowena aggressively handed over her own card. Declined. Over the next 48 hours, their entire financial reality crumbled into dust. They had no cash, no credit, and no way to pay for their premium drink packages or their excursions. My phone began to light up. First, it was a few calls. Then 10. Then 20. By the time they were forced to disembark at the next port and beg an aunt for money to fly home commercially, I had exactly 43 missed calls. I sat on my hotel balcony, listening to the voicemails in chronological order. The early ones were utterly feral with entitlement. "How dare you shut off the cards?" Rowena screamed into the speaker, her mask completely slipping. "You have no right. Turn them back on immediately." By day 5, the tone shifted into sheer, unadulterated panic. "Delphine, please call me. Something is wrong with the bank. We are family. Please." They arrived back at the Belmont Ridge estate dragging their heavy luggage up the long driveway, only to find a massive, bright red sign stabbed into the pristine grass. "Sold." Taped securely to the heavy mahogany front door was a formal eviction mandate, printed on federal legal stationery, ordering the occupants to vacate the premises within 72 hours. Rowena was a predator backed into a corner, and she did the only thing she knew how to do. She played the victim. She frantically called every aunt, uncle, and yacht club friend, summoning them to an emergency family meeting in the grand drawing room of the estate for her final stand. She intended to publicly crucify me, to paint me as the greedy, jealous stepdaughter who had illegally stolen their home. When I walked through the heavy oak doors, the room was absolutely silent. 30 people stared at me with varying degrees of shock and disgust. Rowena stood by the fireplace, her arms wrapped protectively around a weeping Sloane. "Look at her," Rowena spat, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "She is a thief. She forged documents and sold our family home. She has never been one of us. She does not have the blood." I did not raise my voice. I did not defend myself to the aunts and uncles. I simply stepped aside, allowing Merrick to step forward, carrying his worn leather briefcase. I let the authority of the law speak for me. Merrick pulled out the official property deed and the trust mandate. He laid them flat on the coffee table. "The residence was transferred to Delphine 2 years ago by her grandmother," Merrick stated, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "It was an absolute legal title. She sold her own property. There is no forgery. There is only the law." The room shifted nervously. Rowena's face drained of color, but she doubled down, her facade cracking wildly. "It does not matter what a piece of paper says," she shrieked. "The trust belongs to the true family. The trust belongs to Sloane. You cannot steal her birthright." I looked at her, my expression completely frozen. "You want to make this about blood?" I asked quietly. "Let us make it about blood." I reached into my bag and pulled out the certified paternity affidavit and the genetic screening results. I dropped them onto the table next to the deed. "The trust requires a DNA verification for the June distribution," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. So, I took the liberty of expediting the process. Sloane shares 0% of the family DNA. She is not Silas's daughter. She never was. The silence that followed was so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing down on the room. Aunts gasped. Uncles stared at the floor. Sloane looked at her mother, her tear-streaked face suddenly twisting in absolute horror as she realized her entire identity, her entire life of privilege, was a massive fraud. Rowena stood completely paralyzed, her mouth opening and closing silently like a fish on a dock. The grand, arrogant empire she had constructed over 30 years shattered into a million irreparable pieces right in front of her friends. I picked up my purse and turned toward the door. "Only real family," I said softly to Rowena. "And you are not it." 6 months have passed since that day. June arrived, and the family trust was fully distributed into my accounts, securing my children's futures for generations to come. I bought a beautiful, sunlit home on the coast, far away from the toxic shadows of Belmont Ridge. Rowena and Sloane were forced to move into a tiny, cramped apartment on the wrong side of the county. Without my money to prop up their lives, the yacht club friends completely abandoned them. For the first time in her life, the golden child had to fill out a job application. Last night, I sat by the window with my boys. Jonah reached into my jewelry box and pulled out the dark, heavy silver acorn. He held it up to the light. "It is really ugly, Mom," he said honestly. I smiled, pulling him close, feeling a deep, profound sense of peace that no amount of money could ever buy. I have something better than shiny gold, I thought to myself. I have the truth. It is the realest one we have, I told him. And it belongs to us. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that justice was served today, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to cut a toxic family member out of your life? I would love to read your stories.